show.
Welcome to episode 138 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. We are entering the home stretch of the NHL regular season. The playoffs are almost here, the best time of year. And the Leafs, still in third place in the Atlantic Division. It's not a lock that they're going to finish in third. Tampa Bay is on their heels, and the Leafs still have an outside chance of moving up maybe to the 2 seed or even potentially winning the division. It's unlikely, but it's in play. But we have a lot to get into. The Leafs' recent stretch of games. They've gone 2-2 since our last podcast. Joseph Woll looked fantastic against the Hurricanes. Is it going to be Woll or Samsonov game 1 of the playoffs? Auston Matthews still gunning for the Hart Trophy. Has that ship sailed? The Eastern Conference playoff picture. There's a lot to get into. So I promise you want to stay tuned until the very, very end of this podcast. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing today, man?
Anthony Bruno, absolutely ecstatic to be here. Like a good Italian boy, I had my double shot of espresso before the pod. So filled with energy, ready to roll, ready to get at it.
You got to have that pre-show espresso, man.
Yeah, it's automatic.
Absolutely clutch. All right, well, let's get right into this, man, because as I said, there is a ton to get into here. So since our last podcast, the Leafs are 2-2. An impressive 6-3 win over the Oilers, I think, was the highlight of that stretch of games. They also dummied the Washington Capitals. Not that impressive. Washington kind of sucks. And then they also lost to Philly, lost to Carolina on the second half of a back-to-back. So what are your thoughts right now? We're heading into the final 12 games of the season. Where are you at with this Leafs team?
I got to say, it sounds... we hate to be optimistic on this show, Bruno, but I think I'm more confident in this team right now than I have been all season. They're getting scoring from different places, and even the games they lose, like you mentioned, the game to Philadelphia, the game against Carolina last night, they were close games. The Leafs had chances towards the end of those games. They could have tied it, and you're going to lose games. So when you lose, that's how you want to lose. Joseph Woll looking good. That was an awesome sign. We'll get into that a little bit later. And again, this team is doing what they're doing without Marner in the lineup. That's an $11 million player. And I always make the argument with injuries in today's league, regardless of who it is, while the Leafs are playing $11 million under the cap right now. So they're doing pretty decently, and they just look more dangerous to me. And we saw in that Edmonton game, we saw a bit of feistiness, some fighting, some hitting, some chippiness. So I'm pretty happy with the way they've looked in recent games. And as I touched on, I haven't really thought that way at any point during the season. Do I think they are going to roll through the Eastern Conference and the playoffs? Ask me in the playoff preview show about that one. But things are good, man. Things are good. And I'm not completely shutting the door on catching. Last night was a kick in the nuts, but I'm not completely shutting the door yet on catching either Boston or Florida.
Yeah, you never know if either Boston or Florida stumble down the stretch, if the Leafs get really hot, because the Leafs have a pretty weak schedule, the final 12 games of the season. Now, they do play Tampa twice and they play Florida twice. But outside of that, it's a pretty weak schedule. So they could go on a little run here to close out the season and feel good about themselves heading into the playoffs. Now, where do I stand on this team? I'm maybe a little bit more optimistic since our last podcast, because I love that win over Edmonton. And then even the loss to Carolina, I didn't think they played that well, but that's a tough spot. Second half of a back-to-back in Carolina without Mitch Marner. That's a tough game. I mean, you're going into that game pretty much expecting a loss because of the schedule. It kind of just is what it is. And they hung in there. Joseph Woll was fantastic. And as you said, we'll get into that, the whole goaltending battle and who's going to be the game 1 starter. So I thought that was amazing to see, because that was like the best Joseph Woll game we've seen in a very long time. since basically before his injury. So that was real positive. Max Domi is playing well. He's had some really nice chemistry with Auston Matthews. And one of the things that stood out to me the most, and I know we've kind of poked fun at this player since he came over to the Leafs because, he's 6'5", 230 pounds and doesn't do a lot. And if you look at the stats and the analytics, he's not bringing a lot to the table. But Joel Edmondson, Lepore, his asshole per 60 is off the charts.
Yeah,
this guy is on the ice to piss people off and be an absolute asshole. What he was doing to Leon Draisaitl, just kind of like ragdolling him at times, honestly, was one of the greatest things I've seen, because it's been forever since we've had a player, and specifically a defenseman. Now, you could say like Luke Shen, was kind of doing a little bit of this last year when he came over, but we so desperately need a guy who can just be a pain in the ass on the ice, who can be a pain in the ass to the opposing team when they're trying to get to the net, when they're trying to get to those high danger scoring chances in the playoffs, and someone who's going to be out there and not take any shit and kind of set the tone for the rest of the team. And even though you might not see it on paper and you might not see it in the analytics, I think Joel Edmondson could play a pretty key role here for this team.
You're excited for Joel Edmondson, Anthony Bruno. You're glowing, absolutely glowing. It's good to see, man. Very good to see, because in that Edmonton game, it felt like a reverse playoff game for me, where we were the bullies and they never stood a chance and they didn't really have a response. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Bruno. I'm going to put you on the spot because you're super bullish on the Oilers going into the playoffs. Did that game change your mind at all?
No, it didn't change my mind. I am still bullish on the Oilers. Now, listen, was it concerning? I love when the Leafs beat the Oilers. Like, there's no doubt about it. But was it concerning from a standpoint of, like, I've planted my flag on the Oilers as, like, the best team in the West, and I think they have a pretty good chance of getting to the Cup final? Yeah, it was a little concerning because, like, defensively, they did not look great. Skinner obviously did not play well, and that's, like, the glaring weakness of that team is, like, can Stuart Skinner actually withstand 4 rounds of the playoffs and be a consistent force between the pipes for them? That remains to be seen.
And Pickard was shit against Ottawa the next night, so not a good
that's right.
Sign either.
I think with Edmonton, like, they had a horrible start to the season. Then they had just an insane, like, 40 to 50 game stretch where they got things back on track. And now it seems like they've kind of slowed down a little bit. But I'm still confident that team will be playing well when it matters most. And I would still take them pretty much over any opponent in the first round at this point. I'm still pretty bullish on them, but I will admit, they did not look great against the Leafs on Saturday night.
No, I don't see it, Bruno.
Okay.
I don't see it. I think the first real team they play, they're going to lose. Whether it's Vegas or Colorado, one of the real teams in the West.
Okay, so right now, if it was Oilers Vegas first round, you're taking Vegas.
A healthy Vegas, yeah, a fully loaded Vegas. I'm taking them.
Okay, I mean, honestly, it would be hard to bet against Vegas in that spot because the Oilers would be favorites.
Yeah,
you'd be getting an underdog Vegas team at, you would think, full strength. Edmonton could be in trouble, but yeah, as of right now, I still have my flag planted on the Edmonton Oilers, which honestly seems crazy to say because, again, everyone knows me as Mr. Anti-Oilers. Everyone thinks I hate them. But listen, I'm still bullish on this team as of now.
They lost to Ottawa, Bruno.
Yeah, Ottawa stinks. I mean, you can't be losing to the Ottawa Senators.
What are you doing?
That's a complete disaster.
What were the shots though? They were like 50 to 16 or something for Edmonton. So maybe we'll let them off the hook.
And see, that's the thing, Lepore. Like, the Oilers in the third period against the Leafs, I think that was the real Oilers team. And I get it. The Leafs.
What, on the power play? That's the real Oilers team?
Okay, fair enough. They are power play merchants. I totally get that. But and I know the Leafs took their foot off the pedal in that third period because they had a comfortable lead. But man, when Edmonton needs to pile it on, they can be extremely dangerous, man. Like, there were periods in that third where, like, the Leafs couldn't even touch the puck.
Yeah.
So, and that's, if that Oilers team shows up throughout the playoffs, then that's the team I think could actually win the Stanley Cup. But if Stuart Skinner's playing like shit and they can't defend, then they're kind of in the same boat as the Leafs, honestly.
And that's what I expect. I mean, the way I see it is simple. Is their is their goaltending going to do it? No. Is their D going to do it? No. Are they a really hard team to play against where they get in your face and they're a bunch of assholes? No. It's McDavid and Draisaitl that are going to carry that team. And maybe that'll happen, but I don't
see the difference is we've seen McDavid and Draisaitl carry that team on their backs, whereas we have not seen the Leafs guys do that for more than one series.
True.
It's time for a quick break to let you know that this episode is brought to you by the spring cleaning champions, Manscaped. This season, make sure you groom your carpets and your drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. So join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using our exclusive code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Lepore, the fellas, they need to clean up for springtime.
They certainly do, Anthony Bruno. So everyone, vacuum your carpets, mop your floors, clean your bathrooms and your kitchens, but most importantly, take care of those balls so they're shiny and silky smooth. Head over to manscaped.com, GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
Manscaped has everything you need to look good, feel good, and play good. So use our exclusive code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. So do it right now. Go to manscaped.com and use our exclusive code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. I promise you won't be disappointed. It's time for an important message from BetterHelp, a sponsor of today's episode. Sometimes in life, we go through difficult times, whether that's personally, whether that's in a relationship, and your mental health cannot be ignored. And a lot of times, you can't tackle these situations by yourself. You need help. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. They make therapy easier and much less intimidating for a lot of people. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions as a phone call, video chat, or even messaging, whatever is most comfortable for you. BetterHelp will connect you with one of 30,000 therapists in their network. And in most cases, you'll be connected with a therapist within 48 hours. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy. Lepore, this service is incredible.
It is incredible, Anthony Bruno. Mental health is something that's very serious. And be aware, if you're going through a dark time, you do not have to try to beat this thing alone. There are services out there that can provide you with some great help. BetterHelp is number one when it comes to that. As Bruno mentioned, there are different ways you can get in touch with people, different ways you can contact people. It's all up to you. Go to betterhelp.com/GFP.
Join 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live healthier and happier lives. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy to connect with a therapist and see if BetterHelp is right for you. You brought up this topic before the show, so shout out to you because I think this is a great topic. But Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi have been playing very good hockey recently. And I think they have started to change the narrative because there was a point earlier this season where people were like, holy shit, these guys stink. Like horrible signings from Brad Treliving. They're only 1-year deals. So knowing what you know now through 70 games, if you had to go back, would you sign them again to these exact contracts? Or would you look elsewhere?
I would sign Domi, yes. I'll do a 180 on that one. I would sign Domi at $3 million for how he's performing now. Because I'll put it this way, and beyond production. So, as you said, both of them were playing below their salaries up until whatever date you want to circle in the season. Okay, and we've seen a recent surge. But I will say about Domi is now playing above what I expected. Okay. But before I get carried away on Domi, that play with Matthews last night when Domi was in front of the net and he passed, ridiculous. ridiculous. He was square to the goalie. The puck was like 6 feet in front of the net, and even Matthews probably didn't even expect the pass. And I don't know if that's almost like the fault of Auston Matthews because the players who play with him maybe feel obligated to pass it to him, or it was Domi being just insanely unselfish, or a combination of the two
And he
things.
pulled a
But
Mitch Marner.
I think that was embarrassing, man. Like he was in a much better shooting position. It's almost strange how, I mean, in hockey, there's a lot of natural reaction, right? Like I'm playing beer league hockey or pickup hockey tomorrow morning, right? If I'm in that position, I'll have a natural reaction to shoot just based on like my experience playing hockey and being in that position. It won't even clue into my mind to pass. How he passed it off, very, very strange. But anyways, we're complimenting Domi right now. So Domi, I say yes, because prior to the surge, he was playing below his contract, but now I think he's playing above. Like if he played like this all year, it would have been amazing. Unbelievable signing. Bertuzzi, again, was playing below what he was getting paid. Now, and I know his numbers have been really good, but this is what I expect him to be. This is what I expected him to be all year, what he is now. He is involved. He is scoring. You see his presence in front of the net. So Domi, yes. Bertuzzi, I will say no, but he has the rest of the season to convince me.
You know what? Not to be extremely boring, I'm kind of in the same camp as you because I've been so impressed with Domi recently. And it's not even just what he's doing offensively, because I think he's taken a step up offensively. He has shown that he can play with pretty much anybody. He can play center, he can play wing. He's gotten a chance to play with Auston Matthews, and he's taken advantage. Like since Mitch Marner went down, Max Domi, 8 points in 7 games. And by the way, just to talk about Auston Matthews for a second, the narrative that, oh, Marner props him up and he's the reason that, you know, he has all these great seasons. Since Mitch Marner went down, Auston Matthews leading the team with 12 points in 7 games. And don't forget, Auston Matthews has played with literally everyone since he has started his career in the NHL. Like, remember the days he was playing with like Connor Brown and when Zach Hyman was bad Zach Hyman and 50 goal scorer Zach Hyman.
That plug Zach Hyman. I was
like Matthews has played with a lot of guys, man. And it doesn't matter who he plays with. He scores and he puts up a ton of points. But anyway, I don't want to stray off course too much here. Domi, I think, is right now, like he's providing value. 1 year, $3 million. He's, you know, producing at like a 40 to 50 point clip. And I love how he dropped the gloves with Janmark in that Oilers game. Like, and you see Ty sitting in the crowd. And what's with Ty Domi just sitting there? No expression. Like Domi gets into that little tussle and Ty's just sitting there. It's like, can you do something? You're fucking Ty Domi. Everyone loves you. We want you to rile up the crowd a little bit. He's just sitting there like this.
Is he a nervous dad? Maybe that's it. Just like don't.
I think he was trying to. I think he was trying to be too cool for school there. Honestly, Mr. Ty Domi.
Yeah, I found it strange. It was, I think Florida was playing Ottawa, so it's the whole Kachuk Bowl, and one of them got in a fight, and they showed the parents, and they were kind of Keith and the wife were kind of cheering on the fight, and there was that part of me, maybe because I am a parent now, I was just thinking, man, that's your kid in a fight. He might get hurt. Like, aren't you a little scared, a little nervous? Or maybe it's a culture thing within the family. It's just like super alpha. And they're like, yeah, way to go, son. I don't know. I know I wouldn't be wired. I'd be nervous. I think I'd be nervous if one of my kids was brawling in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, I think Ty knows like everything that Max is made of. Like okay, listen, Max Domi is not like a carbon copy of his father, but I think he has like the toughness and the grit and all the intangibles, honestly, of his father. He's just obviously not as good of a fighter. Like I didn't think he was scared. I thought he was just being too cool for school, but it's like, you even give us like a little like bicep or like, just like kind of rile up the crowd a little bit. Like, yeah, damn right. That's my son out there just beating the shit out of someone.
Yeah,
so anyway,
okay.
I hope Ty Domi can bring some more energy because he's at a lot of these games. And again, not that, I want to totally get on Ty because, everyone loves the guy, but come on, a little more energy. But anyway,
he's a good social media follow.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
So Max is providing value. Tyler Bertuzzi, although he's been playing better, there's still a little bit there. We need a little bit more. We need a little bit more, like, just looking at his stats, right? I mean, he got off to a horrible start, but still, overall, 15 goals, 34 points in 68 games. That is not returning value at 5.5 million. Um, he still kind of disappears at times. And listen, I'm still willing to see what this guy's going to bring in the playoffs. I think at this point, I know exactly what Max is going to bring in the playoffs. I think a bigger wild card is which Tyler Bertuzzi is going to show up. Are we going to have the one who kind of doesn't really know his role and he's playing with different guys and he's not getting power play time and it's going to be tough for him to produce? Or are we going to have the Tyler Bertuzzi that we saw when he played for Boston last year and he had 10 points in 7 games against Florida? I have no idea which one's going to show up. So if I had to go back, I would definitely not sign Bertuzzi again. But Domi, 1 year, $3 million, I think makes a ton of sense now looking back.
So he'll be back.
So I guess we're on the same page there. Nothing else. Nothing else.
So at this point, we bring Domi back.
Oh, you're saying, would you bring him back next season? Yeah, I think so. Now, I don't think we should get carried away with like a crazy long-term contract, but if he's willing to return, why the hell not, man? Why the hell not?
Similar number, maybe 2 or 3 year deal you'd do. Yeah.
Okay. So we're on the same page. Are we on the same page about the next conversation here, Lepore? Because this, I think, is going to pick up more steam the closer we get to the playoffs. But like, who the hell is going to be the game 1 starter for the Leafs? Because Joseph Woll, since returning from injury, he wasn't very good until this game against Carolina, where he was phenomenal and basically kept the game from being like 6-1. And Samsonov, I know, has gotten injured, but Samsonov has been a stabilizing force for this team. Like, he's been the Samsonov of last year over the last, 18 to 20 games or however many games it's been since he came back from his little time off in the minors. So who would you put your money on at this point to be game 1 starter? Like, is there even a chance that these guys like platoon in the playoffs? Like, is that crazy to say? Like, what's your read on this goaltending situation right now?
If I was on the truth serum and someone asked me who I want to be the starter in game 1, I would still say Woll. And I know people are screaming that that's unfair based on how Sammy's come back and we've seen more of him. But I'll put it this way. The performance he had last night against Carolina, that was amazing. He gave a team that was tired playing on a back-to-back and played like shit for the most part a chance to win. Okay. And based on what do we know about goalies other than what we watch with their body language and their confidence that you can read off them? I wasn't surprised by it. I expect Woll to do that, and that's a compliment to him. So I'll put it this way. If someone said to me, which goalie is more likely to lose it for Toronto, I would say Sammy. Whereas a goalie's going to win it for Toronto, I think that's a debate. That's a debate. Like, someone's going to steal a series. Sammy's super athletic, and we saw last year he played well against Tampa. But from what we've seen from Woll, like I mentioned, that performance he got hurt against Ottawa, he was bananas. He was amazing last night. I'm just more confident in Woll, and it's the way he moves, his poise in the net. I think he's got really good rebound control. He's big. Samsonov is still a little too floppy for me. And he seems to be made out of glass because he's getting hurt all the time. I don't know, man. It's a hard prediction, but I think right now, if I'm the coach and I was starting the playoffs today, it's Joseph Woll.
I don't blame anyone for saying Woll because he's definitely like the more composed guy. And I'm by no means a goalie expert, but just like foundationally, like he's just like a very solid goalie. He doesn't move around a lot. Again, I don't want to make crazy comparisons to Carey Price, but it kind of reminds you of like that style. Very quiet in the net, always in position. Whereas Samsonov is a little bit more of a wild card, but man, I am not sold on Joseph Woll being the game 1 starter. Like, there's been so many moments. Now, again, this is not the beginning of the season when Samsonov was terrible. This is since he came back from his little sabbatical in the minors. Like, there's been so many moments where he has made 10 bell saves, big saves where he's kept the team in the game. He has more playoff experience, not a ton more playoff experience. I think that matters as well, just knowing how to handle the situation from like a mental standpoint. Whereas Woll was just kind of thrown into the fire against the Panthers last year. And honestly, he wasn't very good. I'm not sold yet, man. Now, if Samsonov is injured, that's a different story. You go to Woll, but I think this is going to be a tougher choice for the coaching staff than we think. Because honestly, at this point, this might sound insane. I'm still leaning towards Samsonov, I think, being the game one starter. It might be like 55-45 at this point, but I think it's closer maybe than people think. Is that fair? Am I crazy for thinking that?
That's closer than people think. I think most people think it's pretty close.
Because I don't know, man. I think if you pulled like 100 Leaf fans, I think like 70 out of 100 would probably say Woll should be the game one starter.
Really? Oh, I kind of thought I was in the minority in that one.
Okay.
Oh, comment down below who should be the game one starter in the playoffs. We'll find out what people think. But I just kind of thought because Sammy's the safer answer. Like the experience, we've seen him in the playoffs before. He's older. We've just seen more of him, period. So I kind of thought people would lean that way. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know, because there have been moments too where Woll's let in some bad goals. Like I know Samsonov has let in some terrible goals, but Woll is not like, this he's not as tight as everyone thinks he is, just in terms of like never allowing bad goals. Like there's been some bad moments from him as well. So again, I'm not totally sold. I think these last 12 games are going to tell the entire story, and whoever wants to take the net for the playoffs is going to take the net. So I think we just got to kind of see how this plays out at this point.
Yeah.
Moving on now to the Hart Trophy conversation.
Yes.
Because it's very interesting how quickly the narrative has changed over the last like 20 games. Because when Matthews was on his crazy run, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we all remember that run he went on. It seemed like he was scoring a hat trick like every other game. He was on pace at that point for over 70 goals. He jumped like right to the top of the betting odds to win the Hart Trophy. And now he's completely fallen out of it. Now there's this narrative with 12 games to play that it's basically McKinnon's to lose. Kucherov is going to be a finalist. And now McDavid has jumped in as a finalist for the Hart Trophy, especially when you're looking at the betting odds. Or if you're talking to any folks in hockey media, it just seems like Matthews has dropped out of it. But what are your thoughts on this? Because this dude has 58 goals. Okay. There's still a chance he can score 70. There's still a pretty good chance that he could score more than Ovechkin did when he had 65 in 07-08. Like we could still be looking at one of the greatest goal scoring seasons of the last 30 years. And it just seems like everyone's like, Matthews is out of it now. He kind of fell off his pace. Give the Hart Trophy to McKinnon, and Matthews isn't even going to finish as a finalist at this point. So where do you stand on Matthews for the Hart right now?
Have we had a year I can't remember the last time, and I guess there's the McDavid factor. And to be fair, in hockey, we've gone through eras where there has been a quote unquote best player, whether it was like Bobby Orr, Gretzky, Lemieux, and even Crosby, Ovechkin, like whatever year you want to pick. Like you kind of knew who was going to win. Even the year Matthews hit 60, you kind of knew he was going to get it. McDavid, the years he was lighting it up, you knew he was going to get it. I can't think of a season where there's been this much debate and there are multiple worthy winners. And you went over the betting odds earlier to win this thing, and it's almost kind of strange. Like I'll ask the question. I have absolutely no problem with Nathan MacKinnon winning the Hart Trophy. I love Nathan MacKinnon, and sure, deem him as the best player in the league this season. Okay, I'm totally okay with that. But why is he such a favorite? I look at the numbers. So at this point, Cooch has got more points right off the bat. He's got more points. Okay. McDavid is probably going to hit 100 assists. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the only players in the history of the league to hit 100 assists are Gretzky, Lemieux, and Bobby Orr. So that's historic if the guy gets 100 assists. Okay. And then you have Auston Matthews, who is on pace to have the best goal scoring season since I was 96 Mario Lemieux, where I think he scored 68. So 69 goal. There you go. Sorry, I shortchanged you, Mario. But Again, why is everyone so slam dunk Nathan MacKinnon? I don't know. And I know sometimes it's media driven, and I've heard stories about these awards where guys kind of campaign for it behind the scenes. So, guys in the media are talking about them more and the agents pushing for stuff. And I know it sounds terrible. I'm just saying what I've been told. But I find it strange that Kucherov may win the Art Ross. McDavid is probably going to hit 100 assists. Matthews is going to have the best goal scoring season in forever. So think of it that way. Is MacKinnon the best goal scorer in the league? No. Does he have the most points? No. Did he do something historic like McDavid where he put up 100 assists? No. So why him? And again, I'm okay with him getting it. But I just find it weird how everywhere you look, it's Nathan MacKinnon. It's going to be him. I don't know.
Yeah, I love how you broke it down because when you look at the betting odds, he is a massive favorite right now.
Yeah.
He's minus 300 to win the Hart. Next on
Why?
the list is Kucherov. And again, it depends what sports book you're looking at, but general consensus, MacKinnon minus 300 favorite, Kucherov 5-1, then McDavid 6-1, and Matthews is around 14, 15-1. I love how you just broke that down. He's not the best goal scorer in the league. He's not the best playmaker in the league. He's not having a historic season. He's having his best season. Is it gotten to the point now where we're just giving it to MacKinnon because it's like almost like it's his moment? It's his crowning moment. And I know he's won the Stanley Cup, but he's never won the Hart Trophy before. Matthews has a Hart. McDavid has a Hart, and Kucherov has a Hart. So he's the only guy in this group that does not have a Hart Trophy yet. Is that why he's the favorite at this point? Because I don't see any explanation. Because even looking at the standings, and then if you want to bring, the team stuff into this, it's not like Colorado is running away with anything. That's the other thing that doesn't make any sense here. Like Colorado, as it stands right now, at the time of recording, they're tied with Dallas, 97 points atop the Central. They actually have a game in hand on Dallas, but I think the other thing going on right now, the Avalanche are on a 9-game winning streak. So maybe that's kind of propped it up as well. Like they're really hot right now. They're the hottest team in the league, but it's not like they're, a lock to win the President's Trophy. There's literally right now like 6 teams that are still in play for the President's Trophy. Vancouver, Dallas, Colorado, Rangers, Hurricanes, Panthers, and Bruins. They're all within 1 point of each other. So Colorado not head and shoulders above anyone in the standings. MacKinnon not really standing out from a statistical standpoint besides having the greatest season of his career. And somehow he's the slam dunk favorite to win the Hart Trophy.
How much value are you placing on his home point streak? That he's going to be the first player since Gretzky to score a point in every game at home all season.
Yeah, you know what I think of when you bring that up? You know how you also mentioned how there hasn't really been a season like this in a while where there's been a lot of contenders. Think back to when Taylor Hall won the Hart Trophy with the Devils.
Yeah,
that was another season. Remember, he had that point streak. He had that crazy point streak, and he kind of willed the Devils into the playoffs. I think he finished like 6th in the league in scoring. He only had like 93 points, but everyone's like, oh my God, the Devils, they snuck into the playoffs. They would not have been able to do it without Taylor Hall. And he had this amazing point streak. And oh my God, we got to give him the Hart. So I think all those things, MacKinnon's the home point streak, Avalanche have won 9 in a row. He's never won the Hart Trophy. He's having his greatest season. I think there's a lot of narrative stuff going on. But when you look at the stats, I mean, holy shit. I mean, you brought up McDavid. This dude's going to finish with 100 assists. He has 91 assists. He's 9 away from 100.
Mm-hmm.
And the Oilers have 13 games left. So he needs 9 assists in his last 13 games to hit 100. And Matthews, let's say to hit 66 to pass Ovi, he needs 8 goals in the final 12 games to have the greatest goal scoring season basically since, because that would be more than Ovi, since, as you said, since Lemieux in 96 when he had 69 goals. And neither of those guys is going to win the Hart Trophy based on the odds.
So I'll point to this. Okay. Like when I think about the Hart Trophy, it's kind of like what we're going over where it's like, hey, what jumps out? What number jumps out or thing from that season jumps out? Okay. So Matthews is at 58 goals right now, 5-8, 15 on the power play. So quick math. He would still be what? he'd still be like top 5 in goals if he didn't have a single power play goal. Like, put that into perspective, right? He'd have 43 goals. Unreal. McDavid, okay, the points. If McDavid finishes with 100 assists, we'll see how it plays out. But it's like he would have been top 10. Top 10 in scoring, I mean, without scoring a single goal. Like, to me, those are the numbers that really jump out and kind of give a person a reason to win the Hart Trophy. And Bruno, I think you nailed it. Kucherov, McDavid, Matthews, they've won it before. Colorado won the Stanley Cup last year. They're on this winning streak. Fucking Pittsburgh last night, though, eh? Up 4-0,
Pittsburgh
man.
sucks.
The Penguins are a reality show, right? Amazon, sign up the Penguins because I'd love to see what's happening behind the scenes. They're on the win streak. I think McKinnon's one of those players too. Everyone likes Nathan MacKinnon. There's no reason to dislike him. He's Canadian. He's from the East Coast. No one hates Colorado. I mean, maybe ask people who play in their division, but I don't know. I don't think any Canadian hockey fan really hates the Colorado Avalanche. He's fun to watch. He's the Tim Hortons guy. He's got a good attitude. There's no reason not to like him. We're like with the Matthews thing. People are campaigning against it because he plays for the Leafs. So, like, let's be honest here. So I think he's going to get it. I think McKinnon's going to get it simply because of all this momentum in the media and the hype. And if he deserves it, I mean, we can talk for hours about it, but I just don't understand, again, why it's such a slam dunk.
It almost seems like they're putting even more stock into the team aspect of this, which I don't like. It's because if you also think about it from the team perspective, the Avalanche are the best team of the 4, right? Tampa's in a wild card spot. The Leafs are in the 3 seed in the Atlantic. The Oilers, because of their terrible start to the season, are not going to win the division. I mean, actually, the division technically is kind of still in, maybe it's not anymore. I mean, mathematically, it's still in play, but now that the Oilers have kind of stumbled a little bit, now they're 10 points behind the Canucks. They still have 2 games in hand. But anyway, I think the team aspect of this is kind of driving MacKinnon as a bigger favorite, which is unfortunate because, yeah, from a statistical standpoint, it kind of doesn't make sense. It's almost like we're all just being forced to, like, accept that he's the Hart Trophy winner. It's like someone's just like kind of planted the seed and now it's like, all right, he's winning the Hart Trophy. It's kind of ridiculous.
And the bookmakers know something, but as you acknowledge, minus 300 based on the seasons those other 3 guys are having, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. But it means they think he's gonna win it. Yeah. And there's no, if someone just showed me those seasons, like where these 4 guys are gonna finish, and then say, okay, make odds on the Hart Trophy, nobody would be minus 300. Like, it's a bad bet.
It's outrageous. Here's what I will say. I still think a lot can be decided over these final 12, 13 games because we saw how quickly the narrative switched from Matthews being the Hart Trophy favorite to now being out of the running. But if he goes on a crazy tear the last 12 games, if McDavid goes ballistic and finishes with like 105 assists and wins the scoring title, he could still win the Hart Trophy. I mean, even Kucherov, like if Kucherov goes nuts, I mean, I think anything's in play. So I think MacKinnon being that big of a favorite right now is kind of crazy unless I'm missing something completely from like the advanced stats that he's just driving winning like more than anyone. But I think it should be a lot closer than the odds indicate.
Well, you look at McDavid right now, 6 points back at Kucherov for the league lead. So if McDavid puts up over 100 assists and wins the Art Ross,
how could he finish behind Kucherov?
Like, why shouldn't he
or MacKinnon for that?
Yeah,
matter.
Like why? What are you pointing to say this guy had a better season than this guy, other than he's never won it before?
Yeah, other than we've already given too many Hart trophies to Connor McDavid, and we can't give him another one.
Yeah.
Anyway, leave your comments down below. Let us know who you think should win the Hart Trophy based on how it looks right now. And also, you know, you can even predict who you think is going to win the Hart Trophy at the end of the season. But Lepore, before we close out the podcast, we have to talk about the Eastern Conference playoff race because it's getting very, very exciting. Now, the Western Conference is also exciting to a certain degree, but man, in the East, the wild card is still completely up for grabs. Like, we could even go as low as like Buffalo still being in play for the second wild card. Like, only 6 points separate Washington, Detroit, the Islanders, Devils, and Sabres. Then you have these insane races for the division titles. Rangers are only a point ahead of the Hurricanes. Panthers and Bruins are tied at 97 points. There's a lot going on here, man. Like, what's your take just on how this is playing out right now in the Eastern Conference?
It's one of those weird years where I think someone's going to get a benefit from not doing as well. And we'll see how it finishes up with the 2 wild cards. But if you look at it, it's like you look at the Metro. Okay, you have the Rangers at first place, Carolina at second place. As it stands now, the Hurricanes would play the Flyers. Okay, the Rangers right now actually have the most points in the East, or the top of the East. But let's say Florida finishes higher than them. That means the Rangers will play the Lightning. Okay, if it stays the way it is now. So your reward for winning the division is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Okay. And I mean, black and white, the Lightning have 4 more points than the Flyers with a game in hand. So you are literally playing a better team. It's weird, man. I'm intrigued to see how it's going to finish up, because do you think that stuff comes into play for the team? I'm not going to say teams are throwing games to get certain opponents, but something like that to me is significant. I think it's really significant. Like that first team you get, like I'll say it as a Leaf fan, if we could get Philadelphia or Washington in the first round, like those would be bad losses. Like if we lost to one of those 2 teams, everyone else, whatever. You're losing to a good team. It's a hard fought series, can go either way. But the advantage to get in that spot where you're playing Philly as opposed to Tampa, again, as if it finishes the way it is now, is huge. But let's point to it, man. You look at those teams racing for 8, Washington, Detroit, the Islanders, Jersey, Buffalo, you circled all of them. That's a big deal, getting one of those teams in the first round, because if you're the Rangers, the Bruins, the Panthers, Carolina, you're a heavy favorite. You are an absolute heavy favorite. So I'm intrigued to see how it's going to finish up. I'm intrigued to know. I'd like to get inside the head of the Leafs right now, because people keep talking, oh, not even the third place is secure, and it's not. But again, if you look at the conference, does it matter? Does it really and truly matter? If they fall to 7, okay, well then they're gonna get like Florida or New York. So they pretty well could get that now, or is
Yeah, it kind of actually almost
Boston?
doesn't matter when you
It
look at
doesn't
it from that
matter.
perspective.
So I don't know. Like I'd love to get inside the Leafs' heads to know like what they want, right? Like, do they really want to finish? Like, I mean, they would want to get home ice. Like that's black and white, but it's a weird layout for the playoffs this year. And I think it kind of ties into the whole thing that the East is going to be hard to predict this year. Really hard to predict. There's going to be some surprises, or even if they're not surprises, it's just a balanced conference. Like I think we went over it before. There's 6 teams people could probably pick that we wouldn't be absolutely flabbergasted, or at least 5 if they won the conference. So it's a good thing. And yeah, it's going to be fun to see how it plays out, the regular season, that is.
You brought up an interesting point. Now, listen, I don't think teams are, like throwing games, and to a certain extent, but I think you're lying to yourself if you don't think, if this race comes down to the wire here in the Eastern Conference, like if it plays out the way that it's playing out right now, where there's 4 teams within a point of each other for not the, well, even the President's Trophy for that matter, but just finishing atop the East, you're telling me that if there's a chance that one of those teams could get the second, or could get, I don't know, a better matchup in the first round, that they're not going to throw like their final game of the season? And when I say throw, like, could they just rest everybody? Could they just start their backup?
Of course.
You're telling me a team wouldn't do that if they could get a more favorable first round matchup? If heading into game 82, all right, if we lose this game, we're going to get the Flyers in round 1 as opposed to the Lightning in round 1. Like, you're telling me you wouldn't do that? So if you're, let's say you're Carolina, final game of the season, if you lose, you get the Flyers in round 1. I'm starting Kochetkov. I'm sitting freaking Sebastian Aho, Svechnikov. I'm sitting everybody, honestly. I'm sitting Natchez. And maybe it's going to kind of look a little obvious, but they could just say, oh, we're resting. These guys are banged up. it could get real interesting here, man, because I think the Flyers stink. Like, I think they absolutely stink. And I know they just beat the Leafs.
Well, they're scratching their captain. Things aren't exactly running
Yeah, that
smoothly over
team,
there.
there's a lot going on
Weird.
there. They're not a serious team. Listen, they have exceeded expectations. I thought they were going to be an absolute tire fire this year. Miraculously, they're in a playoff spot, but you're telling me that one of those teams in the Metro isn't dying to play them in round one? I
Freaking
mean,
right.
serve that team up on a silver platter to be in round
Yeah.
one.
And you get short travel. Like if you're especially you're in New York, you get short travel. You're playing Philadelphia. And I was gonna ask you again, like you'd love to get inside the heads of these teams. I'm a firm believer in sort of the voodoo in hockey. And I've touched on it in the past. So when Montreal beat Toronto in the playoffs, from a hockey standpoint, that made absolutely no sense. Okay. Based on Montreal's record in the regular season, typically they wouldn't even have made the playoffs. But even for that reason, but even beyond that stat, I was still a little nervous going into the series because it was the Montreal Canadiens. It was this weird thing that it's like Toronto and
Like,
Montreal.
we can't lose to this team.
Yeah, but just that thing of like they're gonna play above themselves
Fair
because
enough.
it's Montreal, Toronto, and that's not a insult to Montreal or insult to Toronto. It's just, I think that's just the way sometimes sports is, right? So if you're Florida, okay, and what I mean by that whole thing is that if we would have played any team, any other team but Montreal, but that say had that exact same record or that exact same team makeup, I wouldn't have been nervous at all. But because it was Montreal, I had that tingly feeling like I can see this weird things happening and them doing it, right? And me point to my insecurities as a Leafs fan, but that's how I felt. If you're Florida, okay, there would be the benefit of almost no travel. But if you're Florida, do you want Tampa? I think that's interesting. I think that's really interesting because I think there'd be nothing sweeter for the Lightning to give a big middle finger to Florida and say, we still own this state.
I still think, and maybe I could be wrong, I still think the Panthers would rather play the Leafs, honestly, because I think the Panthers think they could bully really any team in the Eastern Conference. And I know the Leafs have a little bit of a different makeup this year, but if I'm Florida, especially what happened last year in the playoffs, I think they could bully the Leafs. And not that it's going to be, like a 4-game sweep or anything like that, but I think if they had to choose, they would still take the Leafs over over the Lightning in round one.
Yeah, even Boston, to be fair, like why wouldn't they be confident against Boston? They beat them last year, and they're better this year. And Boston's not as good as they were last year. It's fun, man. It's
Yeah,
fun.
no, it's so interesting, man. Like even when you look at the betting odds, and I always go back to the odds, like Eastern Conference champion right now, like all those teams we mentioned are all in play. Like the Hurricanes and Panthers are co-favorites to win the East right now. The Rangers right behind them,
Like why
Bruins right
Carolina?
behind the Rangers, and then Leafs Lightning. So I mean it's gonna be a dogfight, honestly. Like anyone could come out of the East at this point.
It's kind of like the Hart Trophy thing. Like why Carolina more than New York?
Yeah, because
Makes
they
they
haven't
load
even
it
really
up.
had that many like deeper runs. Like they've both been like equally successful, I would say. Like
Yeah,
just in recent memory in terms of how far they've gone in the playoffs. I mean, I think the Hurricanes you could argue are just like a deeper I don't even know if the Hurricanes are that much
that's
deeper
all
than the
bullshit.
Rangers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Gensel pickup, Kuznetsov, like those are nice pickups. But whatever. I mean, these teams are all good, and we've seen it a million times in a 7-game series. It doesn't matter. It's going to come down to nothing. But I never thought I would say this. I never in a million years thought I would say this. But I hope I see a series between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, that would be pretty sweet. I'd still
Yeah.
take Florida. I still think Florida's the best team in the East, but we'll see. We'll see.
Both teams can muck it up too, man. Like people forget about those guys on Tampa. Like they can play that game. Oh, it'd be awesome. That's it. Full stop. I'm hoping for that. Give me the Bruins. Give me the Bruins. The Panthers can play the Lightning. Let's
All
do it.
right. All right. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
This was a good one, Bruno. And we've talked about some pretty negative things in weeks past. I think we kept this one pretty light, put smiles on the faces of our millions of listeners, which is a good thing. But as I said, the Eastern Conference is going to be fun to watch unfold. And there's some matchups I'm really, really rooting for. So hopefully they go the way that Lepore wants, because I just cheer for entertainment, man.
Yeah, I think we're in for a very exciting finish to the season, just given the incredible race right now for every division, for the President's Trophy, for the wild card. It's shaping up to be like one of the more exciting end of season races in recent memory. So that's pretty cool. The Leafs, like I said, they have a pretty weak schedule down the stretch outside of Florida twice, Tampa twice, a lot of winnable games. So we'll see what they got in them as they close out the season here. But that's going to do it for episode 138 of the Gluttons for Punishment podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. If you're a longtime listener or you're listening to us for the first time and you really enjoyed the content, it would be amazing if you give us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. It would do wonders for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you really enjoyed the content, please consider smashing the like button, subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment down below, and ringing the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. They're little things, but I promise if you do these things, it helps us more than you could ever imagine. So that's going to do it. I can't wait for the home stretch of the season. Go Leafs, go. Go Auston Matthews. Go steal the Hart Trophy. Get to 70 goals. Let's do it.
Let's see it, Auston. Give the middle finger to everyone. Let's see it, Auston.
But until then, enjoy the hockey, and we will chat very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.